Hi everybody, Kat here. Thanks for joining me today. After such a wonderful response from my last video, you guys encouraged me to try making another. So here goes. I found a cute little baby robin photo on Unsplash, so it's free to use, and I wanted to winterfy it or Christmasify it or whatever you call it. So here's my version, my kind of test run, and we're going to do that today, nice and soft and watercolory and easy for beginners. So right here it's the first time I'm trying this Meeden watercolor paper. It's a pad of paper my husband ordered off of Amazon. I think it was on sale for Cyber Monday or something. So we're going to try that today. I have a brush. You're just going to need a large brush. This is a size 10. It doesn't matter if it's a 12, a 14, whatever. It's just to wet stuff down. And I have several small brushes here. One's a silver black velvet size 2. This is a 0.2, and it's unmarked. This is a set of 3 I got on Temu. So just some small brushes. I may even change to this one later. This is a Zen by Royal Langnickel, and it says it's a size 2, but that's like a large 2 if you compare it to the silver black velvet 2. You see the difference in those. Just paint with brushes you are comfortable with. Okay, the colors, it looks like a lot. The colors I'm going to be using today. This is cobalt blue hue. This is red ochre. This is pyrrole red. Just use a warm red. That's important. Meaning not a pinky red. This is pyrrole orange. This is Van Dyke brown. This is yellow ochre, sap green, and hooker's green. And of course, next is 2 jars of clean water and something soft tissue to remove some paint. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to wet my brush and I'm going to go into my cobalt. Now, I did put a drop of water into these before I turned my camera on. I just want to make sure you can see this. There we go. So that's nice cobalt blue. Hue. It's not quite the same. A hue is just a color, so they're not actually using real cobalt, the same ingredients, but it's like a synthetic. Whoops. And to tone this down a smidge, I'm gonna pop my brush into the red ochre. And I don't want a gray, but I don't want that bright blue. I think that will be about what I'm looking for. So just a little bit more. I'm using my synthetic brush. If you have really expensive brushes, try to use a brush that's cheaper to do your mixing, especially if you're using pan paints, because you can get a little rough with it. At least I can. Okay, a little bit more yellow, red ochre. Just a dab more. I had to put some new paint in my pan, and it's kind of it's easy to take way too much. So I'm just gonna scratch. There we go. Okay, bit of water, and now I'm going to get a large brush and just wet my paper. So I'm just going to roughly wet it like this. I'm not going to go to the edges. I'm not taping this down. Feel free to tape your work down. This is the first time I'm using this pad, so I don't want to go to the edges. Often I go to the edges and then I kind of contaminate all the other papers. Okay, so with this large brush, I'm going to scoop up this nice blue. And I'm hoping, because red ochre can be a little bit granulating, which means the pigments separate. So I'm hoping I get a little bit of that, because I kind of like when that happens, especially in a background. Okay, so we're not looking for perfection here, just a rough rectangle or square, whatever you choose to do. There. Now, this cute little bird, I'll show you on my painting. It's a bit of an egg shape. So I did not draw this out, but you can draw this out if it makes you feel better. So what you would do is you would just imagine like a branch, and then you would draw like an egg shape, just like that. Just a chubby little egg shape, because that's what these birds look like at that age. They're the cutest little things. So I'm going to just dab out where I think a head would be in the body. And why I'm doing it this method is want it to kind of blend into the background naturally. I don't want it to look like I cut it out. And then there's a tail somewhere down there. Now you see how easy that was? Now, let me see if I can show you the paper. Let me see if I can get some, yes, right there. There's a nice satin finish, so it's still got some good, it's still nice and damp, but it's not sopping wet, which is what you want at this point. So while your blue and your red ochre are doing their thing, you're going to get a mixture of the sap green and red ochre. The red ochre, what that's going to do is just tone down that sap green a little bit. So it looks a little bit less bright. I just want it, but you don't have to do this. This is just something that I like to do. It looks a little bit more natural. And I'm going to take a very pointy brush. If you have a rigger, that could also work. This would be a rigger. It's a liner. That could also work. So wet your brush. Make sure there's no water on your ferrule here, because it will run down and ruin your painting. You'll be so mad at yourself. So I'm going to put over here, I'm just going to put a loose branch here. I'm going to put one here. And I think I'll put one right there. And what I'm going to do, make sure this is nice and thick, your paint. This brush from Temu holds so much water, so I'm going to soak it up. I'm just making another mixture of my color. There we go. And I'm going to just start making like a pine type looking needle, a pine branch. Now, because the background is wet, this is going to soften out. So don't use very wet, watery paint, and don't use a watery brush. Make sure your brush is pretty dry. See, it's hard to pick up the paint. And then I'm going to do that here. This is just the first layer. Use as thin a brush as you can. And the next one. I'll have it coming from over here. Make sure your pine needles are going in different directions. Okay, so we'll leave that for now. Okay, so we're going to get to the bird. So the top of her head is gray. So I'm going to use this cobalt again. And this time I'm going to add enough red ochre that it really grays it down. You see? Bit more. Tiny bit more. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. So I'm going to gently do the top of his head, the crown of his head, and I'm going into beyond the space that I did with my Kleenex, like the beyond the part where I remove the paint with my Kleenex. Now back here is his wing, and I find the less perfect you aim for, the nicer this turns out. So don't worry if there's white showing, don't worry about any of it. Just get those edges in. And I'm going to put a little tiny edge of a wing over here as well. Make some more gray here. Sorry for the ruckus in the background. That's somebody having trouble with the door. Okay. There. So we're going to let that dry, and now I'm going to get some of my orange. And I'm going to do the whole face orange and come down and do the breast. Nice and watercolory. Just drop it in. Once your paper's wet, you can just drop that in. And I'm just adding some water and making the clear water kind of meet up with this orange so it naturally spreads out. Okay. I would like it to have a little bit of a whiter belly, so I'm just going to remove some of that. And I'm going to do some gray for the tail here. So then the next thing I'm going to do is add a tiny bit. That is way too much. Tiny bit of that red to my orange. And I'm going to just drop it in under where the eye would be and right by the wing. Just because it's just so it's a little more concentrated there. Okay. Gives it a little bit of shape. Makes the bird look like it has a little belly. Which would fit right in this family. Just softening those edges. Okay, so now we are really going to let this dry, and I'll be right back. Okay, so now I've zoomed in a little bit more so you can see less of my paint, my palette here, and more of the painting. So now we're going to do some detailing, and I wanted you to be able to see it better. The reason I put this low here, the bird a bit lower, is because I would like to write Merry Christmas. But if you're done with Christmas, like if you're fed up with Christmassy stuff, this is a nice winter paint to do. It doesn't have to be a card. So I'm going to mix up more of this gray for later. Okay, so that's going to be ready for me. Now on these pine needles, this is where I'm going to use my Hooker's Green or Chrome Oxide, whatever you have. It's, I wonder if I have the numbers written down. Sometimes people like to know the numbers and sometimes they don't. So this is the Hooker's Green mixed with some red oxide. Now when you do this mixing with the same colors, what happens is your painting automatically has harmony. It goes together automatically. Like you don't have to worry that your colors are clashing, or if you worry about that stuff. So I'm just going to put some darker pine needles in now. So I'm going to start from where I imagine that little branch is. And try to put them all over, and make sure that your brush isn't wet and your paint is nice and creamy, not a lot of water in it. And you see it's softened out quite a bit in the background because of the because you put the first layer on wet. So it looks pretty full. I'm going to do this one. And turn your work whatever way is easy for your hand to work. I know I don't do that. I try not to move too much when I'm doing my videos, because I want to be sure that I stay in camera frame. But turn your work, make it easy for you. Now I need a bit more water. And the red oxide is not necessary in your greens. I just did it so they're a little more slightly earthy looking. I'm liking those. They're looking good. And I want to thank you all again who, oh gosh, that video, I can't believe how many people saw the video and liked it and commented, and I really appreciate, and I answer everyone. So, you know, sometimes it takes a bit of time for me to get the notifications, but I do try to check several times a day. If you have a question, feel free to ask it. So I think that's looking pretty good. This next step is the branch. And I'm going to put my branch coming from over here. The picture has it coming here and then down. So, but the way this is set up, I think it would look nicer if I had it coming from here and then just kind of blending into this pine needle. So her little feet are kind of right here. So the branch would be right there. So you can draw it out first if you like, or you could just paint it freehand. And I'm just going to have it disappearing into this pine needle. So this is where the yellow ochre is going to come in. I'm just going to, the first layer, I'm just going to add that, because if there's any correcting to be done, you can just cover the yellow ochre with a different color. Okay, just go in behind those. This is just to get it placed. And there we go. And while that's drying and the pine needles are drying, we're going to do this little face. Now, this too, if you're more comfortable drawing it out, go right ahead. So his or her eye would be right about here, rather big eye. And then here, the beak is almost in line with the eye, and it's a bit of a rounded point. Right, just like that. Just do your best. It doesn't have to look perfect. These two things, I'm going to use a black in my bird gray here. You see how it's separating? It's so beautiful. So, but I won't do that just yet. I just want to do a nice layer of a little bit more gray details. I want you to notice, like, you see how nice and soft this bird is? And it doesn't look like we cut him out and stuck him on, because he's blending right into the background. So now I'm just going to add a little bit of Again, move your work to suit your comfort level. And I'm not putting dark everywhere. I'm just putting it in certain areas. I'm going to put it under the little fur, underneath his feathers under his bum. And then under here, where the wings are. It's like the back side of the wings we're seeing here. And that's going to need a bit of, I'm going to add a little bit of lamp black to this gray that I have, just so it's darker. Oops. So it's going to be darker under here and under here and under here where the wing is. There. Now, since I have it out, I'm going to do the eye. I'm going to make it nice and big because their eyes look so big because their faces are so small. There we go. And then we're going to do the beak. I'm just going to add a bit more blue into this because I want more gray here. Okay. Now it looked nice on this paper. This paper is slightly smoother. It's a bit more like hot press. And I liked the effects that I got here. This took me literally 3 minutes, and then it took longer for it to dry than anything else. So you can do this. This is really, you can do this. You just don't make a video while doing it. Okay. Now let's see if this is dry enough. It is. What you can do with the branch is you can make a brown out of what you already have going here. So let's see. If I add the green to this, yeah, that's a nice brown. So I'm just adding the green left over so I don't waste it. There we go. And I'm going to add it to the branch. And I'm not completely outlining the branch. I'm just kind of going underneath where I think it would be dark. And I forgot the little feet before doing this. So if you're following along, don't do this part yet. Do the feet first. So, and then in here, where the branch of this pine needle would be, we're just going to, don't do it evenly, but we're just going to put some of that brown there in between some of these pine needles so that it looks like it's a nice thick bushy pine needle, and you can just see the branch. I hope that makes sense. Like, don't make a solid line is what I'm trying to say. See, like that. This bird is looking a little bit stiff here, so I'm just wetting my brush and I'm trying to soften this a little bit. Just a tiny bit. All right, and before we let everything else dry, I'm going to take a really tiny brush and I'm going to add more concentrated black right to the eyes right there. Here, I'll use this one. This is my smallest brush. This is a 0.10, I believe. It's like 10 over 0. So it's great for little details. Make sure there's no water there. And I'm just going to go around the eye. If you don't leave a highlight, don't worry about it. You can do that later. I'm just going to put a line in for the beak. Okay, so let this dry and we'll be right back. All right, now it's time to do the feet. Again, I'm going to use that tiny brush that I have just because it's sitting here. I'm going to add some of this to the black here. Excuse me, to the gray. I'm going to add some of this brown to the gray. And that's what I'm going to do the little feet with. So just come down and make 3 rounded, not quite a C shape, going around that branch. Okay, so coming out of here, and 1, 2, 3. There we go. I have Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White. If you don't have this, you can use acrylic paint, you can use a gel pen if you like, you can use gouache, white gouache. You can go and get something inexpensive, but don't use watercolor white because it kind of grays down when it dries. It doesn't stay nice and white. All those other things will. Now I'm going to put a little bit on my brush, and I'm just going to tickle the edge of the branch so it looks like there's snow on it. So like I said, this doesn't have to be Christmas, but it is winter, and it's winter here in Montreal, and we have snow everywhere right now. And you know, that's the way it goes here. And I'm going to add just a tickling here and there on some of these pine needles. Just a, you know, a dab here and there. Okay. So I'm going to put my, it's just a damp brush, it's not wet. I'm going to put that in my white paint right here. I'm going to make sure I've got a good amount. And I'm going to dip this in my water. Not a lot, just a little bit. Splash. No. See, it never friggin' works for me. There we go. It's coming. It's coming. Here we go. It's everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere except where I want it. Ding ding. There. So what I end up doing usually is I go around with a gel pen and I kind of improvise. It's hopeless. I'm really hopeless at this. All right. And one last little white drop right there in the eyeball, just to make it look round. I didn't do a drop, but anyway, that's close enough. There, just fix it with the black paint. And anywhere else you want white. Like I lost a lot of the white down here on this paper, on my other paper I didn't. So I'm going to put some down here on the bottom of the bird, because I really like that, the white feathery look I got on my other painting. It was really, I'll try a video doing this paper and see if it's better for you, but I think this is it. Okay, so that's it. I really hope you enjoyed the video and you give this little guy a try. And if you do, don't be shy to post it in the Facebook group. It's a private group. Okay, happy watercoloring, everybody. Bye-bye.